Having failed his exam, Naruto watched as the other academy students brandished their new headbands, proclaiming that, having passed, they were now adults. For a young trainee aiming to become a respected shinobi, it's step one on a path to that dream. But looking back on this moment after coming to understand the world of Naruto, children proclaiming with glee that they now have the right to die on the battlefield doesn't seem like something to long for. With able-bodied children being trained to fight from a young age, the lax requirements to become a shinobi betrayed the need for bodies on the front lines. And though in this time of Cold War, while Genin had many safe missions to take, danger, and even the possibility of war, still lurked around every turn. This idea is furthered with the introduction of Kakashi. Though he's older and serves as one of the most powerful shinobi in Konoha, in his power, all too fitting for a shinobi world that's still growing, he comes across as rather stunted. He reads erotic fiction openly, performs the kancho without blinking. In a story where Naruto has to grow up, finding ways to retain his childish ideals in spite of a world of adults that would rather have him bend to their desires, Kakashi himself is framed from the beginning as a stunted child, holding on to one ideal taken from a friend while otherwise acting as the ideal shinobi tool in many other ways. Naruto is, in no small part, a story about growing up, many adult characters being somewhat childish in ways that the young ones might have room to grow and surpass them. Yet, Naruto also has a very specific context in the Western anime sphere of discussion. Peaking in popularity early in the story, what many people like and fondly remember comes from a very small section of that story. And certain broad takeaways are made not out of understanding of Naruto's totality, but instead, childish misunderstandings taking the words of children as factual. That's not to say these takes ignore later context, but they do misconstrue it, either out of willful bad faith or general ignorance of accepting faulty takes without truly looking into them. Let's take the basic example of Naruto is about hard work beating talent. Such an absolute statement implies that the core of Naruto's entire thematic exploration centers around this one idea. Yet, while I do think that of all of Naruto's ideas, to reduce so much of it to this one specifically is utterly absurd, it would be equally disingenuous to say that Naruto isn't about hard work or talent, as that might imply those ideas aren't in any part of the story at all. Literary theory is rather concerned with finding the one core idea of a given work, and while this might make a lot of sense in regards to literature or film, shorter and more tightly made works that most literary theory was formed around, in regards to long-form stories, the approach risks becoming reductive, as they can explore many ideas. Naruto does have elements of effort, natural talent, and fate, though it's also a story about war, understanding, humanity, duty, conflict, compromise, hope, hypocrisy, and growing up. And these ideas will inevitably layer, contrast, or play off one another at points in the story. As such, I'd like to examine two particular characters at the center of many of the dismissive takes regarding Naruto's thematic exploration, Rock Lee and Hyuga Neji, two characters born into a ninja world that did not accept them, leaving them to grow up and find a place in that world. Two characters whose childish misunderstandings have been quoted as though they were fact, becoming defined by their failures by parts of the fanbase that claims that they were actually right, without recognizing the toxic mentalities defining those beliefs, as those beliefs are applied to later moments in the story without recognizing the whole. Hyuga Neji believed that fate was something immutable, unchangeable, and defined from the moment you were born, that society was able to judge one's worth, separating people into the elite and the losers, those of worth and those without. Neji was born to the cadet branch of the Hyuga clan as a simple result of Hiyashi coming out of the womb moments before Neji's father Hisashi. That simple chance led to one family becoming servants to the other, living to die for them if need be. And if fate had a face, it would certainly be laughing, as Neji possessed exceptional talent from a young age while Hinata struggled along, even her younger sister possessing more talent than her. Though he was so much more capable than her, his life was meant to be for her sake. The strong meant to die for the weak through nothing but the arbitrarity of their birth. And so, with the death of his father in service of the clan, his beliefs were internalized. Actions didn't matter, fate was determined from conception. And through everyone's judgments of others, one continued to be bound even in structures upheld. To take this at face value, in his loss to Naruto, one born to the 4th Hokage and the former Jinchuriki host of Kurama, and reincarnated from amazing shinobi Ashura and Hashirama, we might retroactively see Neji's claims being validated. If Neji was wrong, it was simply that he didn't know the truth. If Neji were right, then as if to validate the idea, he continued to win, while those he recognized as weak, Hinata and Lee came to lose their battles in spite of their drive and will to surpass what opposed them. Hinata, consumed by weakness, looked to Naruto for inspiration. Seeing one beaten down by his poverty and lack of ability, but continuing to strive for improvement made Hinata believe that she could improve, standing against Neji even with the odds stacked against her. And Lee had an even greater struggle, as with his level of ability, even becoming a shinobi at all was a shot in the dark. If one's path in life was determined by birth and judgment from the world around them, then for Lee to walk the road of shinobi was a mistake from the beginning. Though unfit for that path, Guy gave Lee hope, giving the boy a unique training regimen to focus more on what he could accomplish rather than the ninjutsu and genjutsu he was incapable of. Through that drive and effort, he believed he could be a great shinobi. Fighting Sasuke, Lee very much had something to prove. During the battle, he even highlights Sasuke's natural talent as an Uchiha while explaining that his own capabilities are a perfect counter. Through effort and hard work, he surpasses natural talent. Even Sakura focuses on those elements, considering the Sharingan first as Sasuke's greatest asset, even though it's a recently acquired and unpolished ability compared to the smarts, drive, and ninja arts that made him an exceptional genin even before the Land of Waves. Again, much like Neji, Lee's beliefs are at first validated, though, where Neji is believed to be retroactively correct by parts of the fanbase, in Lee's case, the agreement comes more ideologically from the start, the rejection of later material being its apparent betrayal of that message, as characters like Naruto and Sasuke possess power that can't simply be reduced to hard work. But, though Lee's battle with Gaara is one that places one who's worked incredibly hard for every scrap of power he got, against one with much greater power through no effort of his own, is often cited as being an example of Lee's ideals, Lee being the first known character to even come close to threatening Gaara. But while the idea of hard work beating talent is supposedly something Naruto is allegedly saying in its messaging, and Rock Lee vs Gaara is often cited by casual fans as being the best fight in the series, the ubiquity of both takes leading to heavy overlap, what can't be reconciled by this reading is that, if Naruto is a story about hard work overcoming talent, then why does Lee, the picture of hard work, lose to Gaara? A Gaara who may have been pressed for the first time, but as we come to see later in his fight against Sasuke, and further still against Naruto, Lee didn't pull a fraction of Gaara's potential out of him. Lee tried so hard and still failed. But rather than trying to understand what the story is saying with this, audiences simply dismiss it entirely. Naruto apparently contradicting this idea happens well before the later parts of the story where it's outright blown away, supposedly. From my perspective, it stands to reason that the specific message isn't one Naruto is really saying, which in turn begs the question, what is Naruto saying about effort, natural talent, and the fate we might be trapped in? Well, for starters, let's re-examine the battle between Lee and Sasuke. One Lee frames as being between hard work and talent. While from a certain point of view that might be true, for Sasuke, his natural power was something awakened recently. Knowing the full developmental path of the Sharingan, the initial awakening is far from Sasuke's true capabilities, as much as Lee, Sakura, and even Sasuke talk it up. The Sharingan itself is even symbolically linked to perception. Every time Sasuke unlocks a new form of it is when his perspective on the world changes. His first instance where he sees how brutal the world truly is as love is lost. The second after coming to find that he could still care for someone else outside his family. And again when he truly came to understand Itachi's sacrifice. With that in mind, even this younger Sasuke with his special eyes is so very blind to the world, much like those children around him who still have so much room to grow despite the shinobi world claiming that they are rightful adults. And perhaps more importantly to this instance, though Sasuke is touted as a believed genius from the start of the story, in truth his capabilities pale next to Itachi. Sasuke wanted to reach that level to attain the respect his brother got, and even before entering the academy put in lots of hard work and a vain effort to match up. Though from an outside perspective, Sasuke seemed talented, in truth that skill was built on a foundation of hard work, drive, and effort. And in a similar inversion, Rock Lee's fighting style was centered around the 8 gates. Kakashi even remarks, Lee is called a genius of hard work, his obscene drive and effort not something that others can match, in itself becoming just one natural capability of his, not so different from the Sharingan. Against Sasuke, though they both have capabilities in each talent and hard work, Lee isn't the only one to have reduced Sasuke as such, the boy talking up his own Sharingan despite having only recently acquired it. Lee coming out on top because by aiming to go beyond just his natural capabilities, he's able to surpass one who'd become complacent with theirs despite similarly having so much room to grow. But by framing the conflict in a binary way, Lee ultimately placed so much value on hard work and effort that he deeply feared that no amount of hard work would ever be enough, and when it eventually failed him, Lee reaching a position where effort couldn't save him, he couldn't take it. As he confesses to Guy, hard work and effort can't change a thing. With only a faint chance to survive the operation and become a shinobi again, or a 100% chance to survive should he give up on that dream, fate once again laughs as one who started from such a low position was knocked even lower for daring to try and subvert that fate. Lee's failure was that by being so consumed by hard work and talent, he lost sight of his goal and himself. He wanted to be a splendid shinobi without even using the core ninjutsu and genjutsu that they need, but in aiming to surpass Neji and Gaara, he put weight on his dream that distanced it from the original intent of prevailing by his own capabilities, staking his fate not just on his own performance, but of those he aimed to surpass. By Guy's words, he was already a splendid ninja, but Lee wasn't secure in that, so he was injured for his efforts, those which only came at his sacrifice to make up for his inability to endure, which only appeared to lock him into his fate. But, though their paths were laid out for them, the ideology of the series becomes known through Naruto. Battling Neji, he pulls out all of his contradictions, forcing him to reconcile that, though he believed fate was immutable, he was still fighting against it. In defeating Hinata, the main branch he was supposed to be subservient to, he exceeded his position, and in turn, she, a member of the world that judged others so, accepted that. Despite being higher in hierarchy, she met Neji head-on, and though she lost so completely and utterly, in doing so she'd still respected him as an equal. Something he couldn't offer to others if he proclaimed superiority before retreating into the circumstances of servitude for pity whenever it benefited him. Naruto, one dismissed as being a destined failure, faces down Neji with chakra from Kurama. Naruto was raised with a monster inside him, one that marked him as a human weapon in service of the leaf, one that had disrupted his natural chakra flow and made it more difficult to him to accomplish even the most basic techniques, all while threatening to burst out of him based on his emotions, where he could so easily hurt those he cared about. But where Neji let himself be beholden to his circumstances, making no effort to change the way of the clan, Naruto had refused to be defined by his circumstances and had the courage to reject the world around him when he believed it to be wrong. Neji very much a product of that world, a victim of sacrifices made for peace. To prevent conflict in the Hyuga clan, the curse mark was instated to keep those outside of the main branch under control. And after a kidnapping attempt from the Cloud left one of their shinobi dead and the village demanding reparations for the conflict they'd started, rather than let a war start, Hiyashi had to be sacrificed, so Hizashi took his place. Not as a servant hating the systems of the clan that had led to him being a servant in the first place, but as a brother whose love outweighed that hate. Though these actions might have fallen in line with Neji's idea of fate, the boy believing his father, in his hatred of the curse mark system and the main branch, had been forced to die for Hiyashi. In truth, Hiyashi was prepared to die, asked to be offered even, but Hizashi chose, of his own volition, to speak over his superior brother and take his place instead. Though the Hyuga clan was constrained by the systems their ancestors had put into place, those within them still had the accountability to choose to act on them. The world wasn't immutable. Neji only saw it as such because he believed it, even as he surpassed his own circumstances unknowingly. Like Naruto had learned to better control his chakra despite his circumstances making it all the more difficult for him, Neji had acquired techniques he wasn't supposed to know. The 8 trigram palm rotation was only taught within the main family, but Neji had recreated that art completely independently despite being part of the cadet branch. In perfecting his talent, he continued to show the failure of the clan he believed he was beholden to, barred from that main family due to the arbitrarity of birth despite being more than worthy of it. But while like Rock Lee, he stood to evoke Naruto's ideals in overcoming those circumstances, he still aimed to openly reject them as he stood in opposition to Naruto. And in the face of that hypocrisy, Naruto boldly stated that if Neji wasn't going to have the courage to fight his fate, then he should give up here and now, because Naruto would become Hokage and work to change the Hyuga clan himself if Neji wasn't going to. The one who believed himself to be trapped by fate became freed when his beliefs were turned upside down, as the one who he thought a failure surpassed himself, a genius. The manji curse mark that he had called a cage had become opened, that bird flying free. Trapped by his own wounded body, Lee struggled under weights far greater than those he'd shed to fight Gaara. That his efforts might have been for nothing, that his dreams might be well out of reach, agonized him, ruined him. But ultimately, what freed him was much the same as Neji. Approaching a matter of causality, predetermined chances that might inherently call attention to fate, Guy tells Lee that the thing he needs most of all is resolve. If he truly wants to accomplish his dreams, he needs to go for it. And that in itself is more important than any talent or hard work. Lee's own mentality had become his cage, and by choosing to have the courage and resolve to do what he wants, Lee finds yet another talent as he becomes free. His drunken fist style isn't something he worked for, but in having it, he has a capability that he doesn't need to sacrifice himself for. Though powerful, in their most extreme, the gates, that which can open and close, at once, seemed to be the only open path towards his dream, but also risked closing him from it as his injuries became too much to bear. And for Guy, following in the footsteps of his father, Dai, the green beast burned red, like falling leaves meant to usher in a new era. But despite opening all 8 gates, he didn't die after fighting Madara, because Naruto saved him. And I think that's interesting. While phenomenal, Guy's power was ultimately fleeting, at the cost of his life, while Naruto, a shinobi defined by enduring and overcoming, had appealed to the Sage of Six Paths with that very same notion, and achieved a power greater without needing that level of sacrifice. Though Guy was prepared to pass his will on to the next generation, Naruto saved him, surpassing that generation while having the strength to endure on his own power. That clumsy, incompetent boy had blossomed into a great hero, not because of the reasons Lee and Neji were wrong, or why some believe those wrong-headed notions to be right, but for the same reasons they outgrew their childish beliefs and became right. Like Lee had shown his resolve and gained the drunken fist, Naruto found a talent for sage mode beyond even Jiraiya. Rather than a message of hard work beating talent, one shallow and ignorant of reality, Naruto's message instead synthesizes the two. Hard work can lead to the discovery of talent, but precluding both of them is resolve. Talent without the desire to take a hold of and improve on it is nothing, while hard work properly applied can lead to one discovering that which they are exceptional in. The series offers a hopeful and idealistic proclamation to those trying to find themselves. By enduring, one can eventually find a talent all their own. Maybe they need proper guidance, the right mindset, or even a bit of luck. But everyone has something they can accomplish if they put their minds to it. For their resolve and their ability to endure, Rock Lee is no less a splendid shinobi than Naruto, and Neji died as he came to live. Hinata had put herself in front of Naruto, not once, but twice. Even as a successor to the Hyuga, she was still prepared to throw that away for the one she loved, and Neji, even with the curse mark that commanded him, had never been forced to act through it. For Hinata, and for Naruto, he gave his life to protect them, finally coming to understand his father's sibling love, and dying free. With that curse mark fading, so too did the flawed Hyuga practices fade. Revived by the Edo Tensei, Hisashi laments that despite his attempt at agency, he still stands against the Hyuga clan, citing his fate as one of the cadet branch who resented the main branch, as though fate were laughing at him. But Hisashi rejected that laughter, stating that no such fate existed, as Hinata and Neji fought to protect one another, not as master and servant, but equals. Words ringing true as Neji surpassed the hatred he'd been forced to bear for the sake of those he cared about. Struggling against his lack of natural talent, handed a destiny he did not want, Naruto came from a place similar to both of them. Yet, where Neji once claimed one's path is decided from birth, those bad faith arguments proclaiming Naruto's greatness from birth must discard so much context to frame the 14-year-old nihilist as correct. Namikaze Minato had no particular lineage, and his skills with lightning style are nothing Naruto inherited whatsoever. His large chakra pool he received from his Uzumaki lineage allowed him to act as the Jinchuriki host, but that same fact was what kept him from utilizing it for so long. As the Sage of Six Paths explains that his son Ashura was called a dunce, Naruto brings up Ashura's lineage, the shinobi having gotten none of the power that the legendary sage possessed. And in turn, the Sage of Six Paths noted that Naruto didn't inherit anything either. Despite having such exceptional parents, he received none of their ability and talent. But even so, as the reincarnation of Ashura and Hashirama, Naruto becoming an exceptional ninja was fate, the naysayers continue to argue, but again that cannot be further from the truth. By calling attention to reincarnation, understanding, and self-improvement, Naruto as a series very much calls upon a Buddhist framework. The basic belief of Buddhism is that through self-improvement and reincarnation, one can, over the course of many lives, achieve nirvana, enlightenment. If Neji's words were truly accurate, if one was fated not to change, then even through reincarnation, Naruto still would have failed. Even if Hashirama accomplished great things, he was still a failure in the one way Naruto couldn't accept. For Naruto, becoming Hokage after failing to save Sasuke was something he would not allow, claiming that he would save Sasuke or die trying, and that separated him from his prior reincarnates. If Neji were right, if Naruto is destined to be just the person he was born as, then Naruto wouldn't have been any different from Ashura and Hashirama. He wouldn't have been able to change, and would have failed that reincarnate of Indra and Madara like they had been failed. But Naruto never accepted that Neji was right in the first place. His existence as a reincarnation wasn't a mark of destined success, it was a cursed mark of presumed failure. To become a Hokage that could stab his best friend in the back would be failing to put into action what he learned from Aku, that protecting one's comrades was the most important thing. Even from that point on, he was trying to improve and change, even beyond the fate he was lumped with, from his upbringing as an orphan, the host of the Nine-Tailed Beast, the third in a trilogy of failed Toad Sages, and the next in a sequence of reincarnates who'd failed their brothers. To define Naruto only by the successes he achieved, while ignoring the failures and struggles he had to overcome to do it, is as vapid, bitter, and empty as it comes. And the one who first saved Naruto and started him down that path to become better, to become Hokage, wasn't any great reincarnate or amazing talent. It was Iruka, a shinobi about as normal came. Once again, I would like to thank my patrons: Brian Nesseth, Jojo32161, Flarbu, Kurosawa, Muhammad Akim, Bayonort, Bro Rike, Justice Man, Offline But Not, Sam Bellmeyer, Tengoon, and Zazojo. Thank you for watching.